Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
All right, welcome back. So let's take a quick look at how we can look at some of the other properties of some of these objects here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this cube here, and I'll just push F to focus in. And you can see that there's a bunch of different options here. So the first option is this static mesh here, okay? So you can see that if you click on this, you can change this to a bunch of different options. Now, what are all these options? These are all the options that came with the starter kit here. So there's a lot of options here. If I wanted to change this to a window, look at that. It's now a window. And I'm just pushing Control Z to undo everything. So if I want it to be a cube, you know, this is a rounded cube if you look at it carefully. The rounded corners. If you've taken a Blender course, which I highly recommend you do, you can see that here. Now you can change it to pretty much whatever you want. Now anything that's within the project here will show up here. So as you can see, it has a bunch of starter content. Where is that starter content? Well, let's take a look and click this item here. You can see that we have content. We have all of our first person content here. This is basically all the items that make this work, right? And these are kind of like the source files. The first person blueprint, that's where all the code is, right? So we have a game mode, and we'll be talking about that in another tutorial. But basically, the game mode keeps data about the actual game. We have the first person character. And if I double click on this here, it'll come up with a screen, and I always like to put them up here. And you can see that this is the blueprints. This is what's making the actual player work. And we're not going to be talking about that quite yet, but we will soon, okay? So you don't really need to understand all of this here, but all you need to understand is that in order to make this work, this code, this blueprint code needs to be there. If it isn't there, it's not going to work, right? And you can see that there's geometry, the meshes, we have our cube, and that's where a lot of our items are there. And then we also have the starter content, so you can have the architecture, etc. So going back to this cube here, let's just focus here. When you click on this, what it will do is it has a whole bunch of starter content, and that starter content will be in there. And if you add in, let's say, a template or anything like that, it is going to show up there, okay? So that's the one thing that we talked about here. The other thing that we talked about is the cube, but we actually did talk about the physics here. And if you look at these physics, there's a bunch of different options which we'll be talking about in a different tutorial. But the one thing I really want to work with is the material, okay? So you think about it, you have the geometry of what it is you're trying to display, and then you have the material. Think of this like the paint, right? And there's a bunch of different materials that the starter content comes with, and you know, you can basically type in, I believe there's a concrete one here. Yeah, so let's do concrete poured, okay? And so you can see here, this now has concrete on it, and so it looks like a concrete block, okay? That actually looks pretty cool. You can make it wood. I really like the wood that comes with the starter content. So you can see that there's the wood here, and you know, we now have a wooden block. And if we look at this here again, you know, oak, but has water, which I think is really cool. So you have like a water cube. So you can pretty much play around with that here. Now, if you're seeing something that says rendering shaders, what that means is that you have to render the shaders in order to make it work. If you don't do that, it really won't work here. Now, you're looking at some of these other materials here. These materials are meant for a specific type of geometry, and you know, it's looking a little weird, and that's because it's not meant for it. Some of the materials work really well, some of them don't here. Now, of course, you can apply that to pretty much everything here. So if I do concrete, right, and I wanted to have a concrete wall, you'll see that, well, it's there, but it's stretched. And that's because in order for the computer to view that, you have to kind of map everything out within the 3D modeling program. And in this case, the map is stretched. And because it's stretched, it is stretched here. So it's called UV editing. It's a whole different tutorial, first of all, but basically you have to understand that if your UVs aren't set correctly, then your textures won't be set correctly here, okay? And that's why I said in a couple tutorials ago, if we go back to this cube and I switch around the, floor is probably not a good one. Let's do something that, yeah, here we go. So you can see that the clay blocks look pretty good. And if I type an R and I scale this out here, you can see that it gets stretched. And that's why you don't want to scale things right away, just because you don't want things to be stretched there, okay? So there you go. You can see that we now have a very basic overview of how to move things around, how to texture them, etc. See you in the next tutorial.